Right, well, happy birthday, OII. I hope we get to sing that sometime tonight. Well done to everybody, especially to Bill, and best of luck to Helen if she's here. I haven't seen her. We're taking over as the new director. Thanks for the honour of asking me to speak at this awesome event. I'm used to sort of standing on the shoulders of giants, but here I am standing between them, or sitting between them. Just amazing to be part of this, a huge honour. I want to pay tribute to the three people that most inspired me in my work in the very early days. That was Vannevar Bush and his paper As We May Think. Ted Nelson, I don't know if he's here, the man who invented the phrase, terms, hypertext, hypermedia, and so much else, and the phrase everything is deeply intertwingled, which it really is. Of course, that echoes what Vint was saying. And Doug Engelbart, Windows, the mouse, pointing, clicking, augmenting the human intellect was the phrase that I would pick out from the things he did and said. I called my talk A Web-Wise World. It should really have a question mark after it. I really want to bring out 3 points. First of all, let's remember back to what life was like before the web, or maybe what life would be like without the web. I was very much part of the hypertext community and was around as the web was beginning to emerge. And I remember those pre-web years. I find it quite amazing that there are, so many people on this planet that don't remember that world. I remember trying to explain hypertext to people when most people didn't have a computer. It was actually very difficult. It now seems like it's just part of the air we breathe. But it was really difficult to explain that you're going to connect all these things up by links on this thing called a computer that you've never seen or heard of. We were solving a problem people didn't know they had, and the phrase was always, why would I want to do that? Even if they had computers in business, it was always, why would I want to put my documents into HTML? Why would I, all those comments. 1980, Ted coined the phrase, the words hypertext, hypermedia in the 60s, but 1987 was a very seminal year for me and for the hypertext community. It was the first hypertext conference. Apple produced an application called HyperCard, and the world started to buzz around what was this thing that you could do with information on computers. In 1989, I had a fantastic year in the States, and that's when I first heard TED Talk. I heard a TED Talk, Ted Nelson talk. And I met Doug for the first time and began my own journey developing microcosm. At the University of Graz, Hyper-G was emerging, and at CERN, Tim had written his spec for the web, which his boss, Mike Sendall, described vague but exciting, and let him get on with it. It was just a time for when people wanted to share. The internet was there, thanks to people like Vint, and people wanted to share information, share documents. Email was taking off. We had things like FTTP and WACE and Gopher were emerging, but it was all quite difficult to use. In 1990, I went to my first hypertext conference in Paris, and that's where I first met Tim. He hadn't called it the World Wide Web then. We gave papers at that conference about our different systems. I've stayed in touch with Tim ever since. But the conference I really remember, it was 1991. The ACM conference in Texas was my first US conference as an academic. Well, my first US conference in San Antonio, Texas. And this was the conference that famously rejected Tim's paper about the web. It was an ACM conference, and as Tim would say, it wasn't a particularly good paper, but as an academic paper. But of course, the idea was seminal, and Tim, as you do, and as we did, because they rejected our paper as well. What you do is you send in a poster or a demo, so you get to go to the conference. And I remember so well sitting in the demo room. We had a demo of microcosm, and 2 down with Tim and Robert demoing the web. It's the first time I saw the web. I think Tim had to use his own money to get the phone line to use the internet to do a demo. Anyway, what I also remember is that this was Texas, and outside, it was a lovely evening, and outside in the courtyard was a tequila fountain. And this was the conference reception, and everybody was outside drinking margaritas. So there weren't a lot of people looking at the demo of what Tim was then calling the World Wide Web. So we, fellow demoers, I remember looking over his shoulder as he was demoing, and I'm thinking, how pretentious to call it the World Wide Web. It's like the world, the baseball series. And also, sorry, US people, I know the story about that, so I know it's not really, you don't mean it to be a World Series. But I also remember looking at it and thinking, well, there's nothing new here. This is very, very mundane hypertext. He embeds the links in his documents, and they only point one way. This isn't going to take off. So there you go. So what Tim got right, and so many of us got wrong, was that this all had to work on the internet. It was all about either everybody used it or nobody would. And when you think about what you do with the web on the internet, you do it because the driving force is there's so many people out there that could look at it, do things with it. Error 404 was hugely important. Tim let the links fail, and so many of us in the hypertext community were saying, we've got to be pure, the people won't use this if the links fail. Actually, if you want it to scale, you've got to let the links fail, because people fail, people are human. And what we didn't get then was we thought it was all about technology, and of course it isn't, it's all about people. The third thing he got so right was he gave it away, and he used open and universal standards. The democracy and of what he did. And the universal standards is so important. What he had to do, and what we have to do now as we go forward, is persuade people to use the same standards. So in some ways the growth was slow, in others it was phenomenally fast. Few people had computers at home, so early web-based businesses were absolutely doomed to fail. Only the fittest survived and pointed the way to the future. I remember when the dot-com bubble burst, reading in the newspapers that was the end of shopping on the internet. I think we've proved them wrong. Google emerged in the late 90s, way after the web first started. Remember only 10 years ago, as Bill said, remember the early search engines? They used to tell you which websites had been published. That's what we thought we needed, was a directory for the web. That's not what we needed. We needed the search engine that the Google guys brought to us. So many stories around that. The standards developed mostly from W3C, the very far-sighted organisation set up by Tim and his advisors. And browsers became more interactive, the technology moved on, growth of broadband to the home, Wi-Fi, increasing mobility. That led to the growth of the social networks. Who would have thought that we'd be doing what we do today, what the kids do today on the social networks? It was always, when we used to talk about e-books or communities on the web, people used to say, why would we want to do that? Billions do it every day now. So Web 2.0, the second web revolution, the wikis and Wikipedia, blogs, Flickr, YouTube, MySpace, RIP, Facebook, Twitter. Always one dominant application in each dominant culture, or globally. Google in most of the world, Baidu in China, one Amazon, one eBay, one Facebook. It's because you've got to be where everyone else is, unless you choose not to be. That's what the web's about. So 20 years on from all that, we celebrated the 20th anniversary of the web on August the 6th. That was when the first website went up at CERN. 20 years on, we're in what I would call a web-wise world. We now instinctively know how the web works. I don't mean we know technically, most people wouldn't have a clue, but we know socially how it works. And as a society, we're developing ever more sophisticated applications and uses. Crowdsourcing, Twitter, to name just two. These, like the web, are, my sociologist friends have taught me, co-created or co-constituted. This is technology and society evolving together. It's a highly complex socio-technical system. The young are particularly very web-wise, the web natives, and increasingly live their lives on and through the web. And I echo what Vint said about, increasingly we are going to live in a virtual reality world. The world blurs the internet and the web. Some languages don't have don't distinguish. It's just the net. I love the phrase from, I can't remember the name of that comedy series in the UK, French and Saunders, the interweb. I just love using the interweb, but it doesn't have the gravitas. But it's all about, they actually are blurred in people's minds. I was taken back in time on Saturday. My husband has just become, for his sins, and if you know Pete, you will wonder why, but he's just become a parish councillor. He's got a sense of community. And we went to our village open day on Saturday, and I went to talk to the Wellow History Society. They've got, West Wellow's our village, they've got some wonderful photos. And I went up to them and I said, have you got any of these on the web? Are you digitising them? Have you got a plan to do that? And they said, why would we want to do that? And I was taken aback because I didn't expect that answer today. They might have said, well, we haven't got time or the expertise, or why would we want to do that? I said, well, for preservation mainly, given Vince's remarks, of course, about problems about that in the future, the bits dying. But, it would help you preserve them, and you could let other people could look at them on the web, and they'd say, but they can come and ask us for them. They said that. This was on Saturday. They could come and up and there. And I said, but if you put them on the web, then people could help you identify who's in the pictures. And they said, yeah, but most of the people in the pictures are dead. Anyway, this was like I'd gone back in time. This is village life. But nowadays, people, businesses, governments, all types of institutions have become web-wise. Could we live without it now? What would happen if Tim turned it off, as he sometimes threatens to do? What if we killed it? There are all sorts of ways we could kill the web. They could be social, technical, political, criminal, or a combination thereof. Think of the impact of power cuts in the future. The net is a part of the critical national infrastructure. Everything is very connected. And it continues to evolve. We're moving into the third web revolution, Web 3.0, the web of linked data, the semantic web. We're not web of data wise yet. It's harder to build, to explain, to envisage. People don't know they want it yet. Why would we want to do that, they say? Why would we want to put our data on the web? Why would we want to put it on the web in RDF? I've got my Microsoft database. I don't need to do anything else. But we are hungry to share data as a society. Big science, big society, and I mean that in the community sense, not the political sense. Open data, open government. Tim, Nigel Shadbolt, who's here, Jim Hendler, several of the world leaders, I don't necessarily mean them, I was thinking of Obama, at the Open Government Partnership launch in New York this week. The web is about to become the world's database management system. It's already a global document management system, a hypertext system, and the world's social network. We need to understand the web. The web worlds we have built, the web worlds we are building now and might build in the future. They are social machines, and we need to understand how to build them successfully and study their impact. We, as Bill said, Tim, Nigel, myself, Danny Weitz and Jim Hendler, founded the idea of web science, the study of the web and its impact on society from a socio-technical point of view, not just technical. In Europe, there's a movement for internet science, and web and internet science are very connected. And John Crowcroft taught me something the other day. He said, well, internet science is what's below HTTP, and that's good enough for me. But they're actually both, it's all about understanding the technology and what society does with it. So we're looking at the future web of linked data and what world that will be. It will be integrated, of course, with the web of documents and the social networks. And whether we can build a semantic web in the way Tim envisaged when he first thought about the World Wide Web. So my last question is, are we building a wiser world? Think of the analogy we always draw is with the printing press and the great social revolutions that brought about, including enabling society to read. For good or bad, the web has given us access to information and the knowledge we derive from that information in ways that just weren't possible before. Government to citizen, system to government, business to business, business to consumer, person to person, community to community. More access to more information for more and more people. Trillions are about to join us on the net through the mobile devices. Does this, can this, and will this make us wiser? It's certainly making the world flatter, a more level playing field. A student of mine was in Kenya studying how people in the street markets and slums are using the mobile devices to access the internet. How can they afford it? And she met someone who lived on the streets, really, who'd been given a mobile phone by a charity and access to the internet. He made jewellery out of bones that he got from the slaughterhouses. He put pictures of his jewellery on the web and had got an order from Europe. Right, so, you know, this can make a difference. That's just one little story. Evidenced by the Arab Spring and the other populist movements around the world, it is harder for governments to keep their citizens in the dark ages. Governments' initial instincts may be to turn the networks off. Evidence Egypt. When I was in Davos, lucky enough to be in Davos at the World Economic Forum that night when Egypt turned the internet off, and I was hosting a web science dinner, and one of the Americans who was attending the dinner, is quite a senior person in the government, said, "Oh, can we do that? Can we turn the internet off? How do I do that?" In an American accent. Sorry, I can't. The London riots, out in here, the government's first instinct was to turn everything off. But Manuel's the expert on this, but it doesn't work at so many different levels. The web, or the net, is increasingly helping the silent majority to find its voice. So when historians look back in centuries to come on the legacy of the web, I hope, and indeed I sincerely believe, the evidence will show that it led over time to a wiser world. Thanks.